All right, welcome back to Inside Look. Today we are talking with the Canada's NCAA team's men's head coach, Clint Schneider. Schneider, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you,
Uh,
Adam?
I'm doing well, Schneider. I'm doing well. First of all, can you just tell us a little bit of history about Fraser University and a little bit about yourself as a coach?
Sure. Yeah, I'm the fourth head coach at Fraser University men's soccer history. Fortunate to come behind some big time people, including Alan Koch, who's coached the MLS, now CPL coach at FC Edmonton. Keith Watts, who won 2 national championships, and John Buchanan as well, who won himself a national championship. And during those courses of the years, been numerous Canadian national team guys come from our program, 14 in all, and 2 guys that played in the 1986 World Cup with Canada, which is pretty cool. Numerous, I think now over 80 players who've signed professional contracts from the program. So you take a lot of pride in that on the development, and certainly trying to keep the torch going for that. I think that we're not far away of having another Canadian national team guy come through, but the landscape has changed quite a bit too in football in North America when it comes to college's place in that. We've also played in the States since day one, both in NEIA and now in NCAA Division II. Fortunate to play in a good conference in the Northwest, where travel's not too bad. We fly a lot. We're down in the States a lot, in California, sometimes in Hawaii, which is a selling point, of course. And that's an exciting a bit to the group. It makes us very unique, is being able to carry the Canadian banner, the Canadian flag, down to the States, and have the national anthem played before games. And we certainly try to recruit that way too, is have Canadians that want to represent the university and to a large extent the country when they go down and play these games. So it's an exciting time. The vast majority of our roster live close to home. I would say that bit is maybe the most unique bit of us, and being an NCAA school is that over probably 95% of our roster live at home, and recruited that way too, to try to again have as many Canadians as possible, have as many local guys as possible. And I believe that's the key ingredient to winning a national championship.
Yeah, and it's a really strong, rich history of Canadians going through SFU. And those Hawaii trips sound pretty fun from what I hear.
Yeah.
So what kind of footballing characteristics are you looking for in a player, like across the board, going through every position? What are kind of some ideal characteristics that you think players need to have to play at SFU?
Sure. That's a really good question, Adam. I think that ultimately, as the head coach, we have to really describe the type of profile we want in every position. If we want to try to play a certain way that we want to play, and also have some flexibility in the way we play. You were fortunate, or we were fortunate to have a player of your ability that has versatility. I think that's really an important piece for me. I like versatility. It's not the number one in any position, but being able to play a variety of positions, it only helps a player be more available to the coach, and certainly me, if we have a guy that can play multiple places on the pitch. That way we can put together the best of 11. I'm not the type of guy that's going to go and say and turn down the best number 10 in the province, for example, or in Canada, just because we have other players in that same spot. I think that you have to kind of move the pieces around and make it work. So I really like flexibility in players. I mean, outside the goalkeeper, even though goalkeepers, same thing, all can be forwards. But yeah, I like versatility in players. I think that's really important. Football brains, obviously in the middle of the park, I think is massive. It may be the number one characteristic I look for in players. centrally is the football brain. Do they have characteristics of being a footballer? And how I define that is the habits, right? Checking shoulders. Are they always trying to play on the half turn? How quick do they play? What is their decision making like? Are they trying to play safe all the time? Are they taking chances? These are really important things to me in the program, and we've been really lucky to have a vein of players, and you're included in this too, Adam, is because you were part of the first recruiting class we had, is having proper footballers in the middle of the park to be able to play that way. Because if we didn't have that, then obviously we changed the style, but we actively recruit players that do that. I don't really care how tall they are. I don't care how athletic they are. Obviously those things, there has to be some of that per se, but they have to be able to think the game and think quick to play in the middle of the park for us. Out wide, it really depends on the fullback that they played with. If we have a player like a Michael North, who I think could be a pro right now if he chose not to be an accountant and make lots of money for himself, you have a guy that can overlap and give you a lot out wide and can go up and down all 90 minutes and be very dangerous in possession. Then you can employ or deploy a winger that could be more inside and play in the half spaces and be a kind of another attacking midfielder. If you have a stay-at-home fullback, then in my opinion, like to have a winger that's very north-south, that's disciplined to stay wide. I think that's really important. I never thought about that as being so important until you have wingers who are not disciplined to stay wide, and how difficult that is to manage the rest of the 11, and it changes the way that you want to play, and it changes spacing if you don't have that. But there are certain players that they understand that and they do it, and they realize that that's their role, and they're very, very effective at that when they choose to do it. A guy comes to mind that I think that developed into being a disciplined winger that stay wide is a Jovan, who you've played with, and I think that he became better and better and better of just learning his role of being a wide midfielder, who obviously could come inside, but his role was to stay wide, either beat his man and get a cross in, or beat his man and score a goal inside. And he was good enough to do it with his right or left foot. I like to have a target forward. I like to have a guy also that can get in behind too, that has a bit of pace. Great to have both those things. Sometimes not realistic. But if you can have a guy that can do that, can hold up play to allow other players to get involved, but also is athletic enough to get in behind and really stretch teams and make things very difficult for center backs by playing between the two center backs as opposed to just staying next to one, which happens all the time in youth football. And then, you got to score goals if you're a forward. Take a guy that I know can guarantee me 20 goals, but didn't defend. Who cares, right? Because you can work around it. Goalkeeping. I was a goalkeeper, and so there's a certain profile of goalkeeper that I really like. But most importantly, it's just making the saves that they're supposed to make. If they have it in their ability to make the game-changing save, this is great. And of course, we try to recognize that. But I will never sacrifice a guy that can make the save that is out of this world when they can't make the easy stuff consistently. It's really important to me, and they have to be able to talk and organize quickly, effectively, clearly, right? Those things are really, really important. Both center back positions for us, we like to have a left-footed guy on the left side. To a certain degree, that may be one of the most important attributes of those positions, is that having a left-footed guy, the left-footed center back position, and a left back that's left-footed as well. So we have balance in the way we play. In center back position, they have to be able to play a bit and pass the ball. If we're going to build out of the back the way that we want to play, and also have some versatility in the way we want to play too, got to be able to be comfortable on the ball in pressure, and making good decisions. And that's not sacrificing their ability to ball in and be a defender first. So much, in fact, I think that we have now started to look at center back in the position is, can that player play as a defensive midfielder too? Are they football confident enough that they can play there too? They don't have to be an All-American, but can they play there? And if they can, then that's the kind of center back we're looking for now. We don't want this guy that's just a defender first, and they get in and just hit it as high as they can, right? I think you have to be able to defend. You have to want to defend, put your body on the line. I think these things are really important. And something we learned a lot last year was talking. You don't really realize how important and effective that is when you don't have it, and I think that communication is massive. That's across the board. We want guys that want to talk and not just be vocal in the change room, because anybody can do that, but be vocal on the pitch. And even if you're saying the wrong thing, sometimes not saying something is the wrong thing. No, just communicating and be comfortable with that. But that's I know you're wanting to say something. That's a pretty brief breakdown, or not lengthy breakdown, of the group that I'm looking for. So.
Yeah, no, I think the communication thing is really big. And just want to touch on something that you did speak about, which was balance. You talked about balance being really key across across a lot of teams. And for those who don't know, back in, I think it was 2011, 2012, SFU went to back-to-back Final Fours.
That's right.
In Division II. And I remember watching those teams, and they were balanced really across the board. That was with Koch's two of his last 3 years. That's what happened. And, those were super, super, super key components of those teams. It's just how balanced they were.
Yeah. Well, goals could come from a variety of different ways and areas. And I think that's really important. I mean, I was lucky enough to be an assistant coach and part of those groups. And, there were a lot of strengths in those teams, very deep and positions. And so, if things weren't effective in one way, if a person or personnel wasn't doing the job, you could substitute and put 2 or 3 other guys that were very, very good in the level and drop. And in NCAA college soccer, that is such a big deal, if you have that. As opposed to just running guys in and out just to give guys breathers, and seeing the level drop. And I've experienced that on the other end where you don't have a deep roster, and so you hope that you stay healthy, because that if you don't, then it's not the same team, and it's very difficult to win games that way, and it's very difficult to keep the level really, really, really high over the course of the entire season without having drops in that because of fatigue, right? And to be able to share minutes somehow, some way, effectively, right? But yeah, I would agree with that. I think that those two teams were very, very deep, and very good at what they were good at. So, and that's why they were so successful.
Now, looking at the non-footballing component, what kind of people are you trying to recruit? Like, what are kind of like the non-football characteristics that you need, that you think are necessary for a recruit?
Yeah, I mean, Adam, I've been coaching a long time now, and certainly had players that, and I've coached that are very difficult to manage as people. And with that being said, I wouldn't say that's the most important thing per se. I think it's how they manage the locker room and their teammates. I would say that, obviously I would love to have a group of guys that are really all like them a lot and want to have beers with them when they're done playing. But that's just not the case. The most important thing, though, is that they'll go to battle for their teammates. That's what I really care about the most, is that they may not all be mates, outside, that's great if they are, I think, because that's easier than to go to battle for each other. But the willingness to, when you're playing, that you put aside whatever else you have, and you do the business and you run for your mate, right? And you work your tail off for them. That's the most important thing. I'd love to say that, for me, having players are really good trainers is like, I really enjoy that, because training has always been one of the most fun things about being a coach, is being out on the training pitch and working on different things and socializing and communicating and getting to know guys on a different level in that way. And I really like that. But again, the reality is that some guys are not good trainers, but when you're in 11v11 and you're playing games, you got to have them in your 11s, right? Some guys are horrendous in short-sighted games in training sessions, and I think you know who I'm referring to. And it would lose every single time because it'd be self-destruction always, right? But that's the guy you would pencil in right away to be in the 11. And this particular person, would win matches for you, right? And he runs for his teammates, and his teammates run for him, and so that ultimately trumps everything, right? I think that, again, I would say, again, long-winded. Will this person be selfless enough to run for their teammates? Can they be a good teammate in that way? And I think that if you have a full squad of this, then it's really great. But if you have the vast majority that are willing to do that, that's when you can have really special seasons. That's what I believe.
All right. And now looking at, SFU as an institution, what are kind of some of the academic standards that need to be met to get into the school?
So high school students, Canadians, threshold, generally speaking, 80%. That's just getting into school. If you're trying to get into different faculties, it gets more and more challenging. Engineering, 90%. BD school business, definitely in the upper 80s, if not 90% now. And some other faculties are getting that way too. Sciences are getting high. But if you're looking to get into arts, communications, some education stuff, 80% above, you're on track. That's for sure. As long as you're hitting up on your grade 12 courses and you're making sure you're taking the appropriate ones.
All right. Now, so say someone was to get 90% or something, want to go to BD. What do you think the threshold is for academic aid, like financial aid?
95% is what they tell us. So,
95%.
I personally don't rely on that. If it happens, great for guys, but the reality is that it's achievable, of course, in high school. I mean, I think it is, but there's a lot of extracurriculars that go into people getting in their high school career, and so they're not maybe just super academic focused, like a Brandon Watson, who that is the number one. That's not the reality for everybody. So that's okay.
And for your team, what are the individual GPA requirements? So for a recruit, they've been accepted, they've gone to the school, now they got to go to class. Kind of what GPA do they need to maintain and going forward?
Sure. So 2.0 is the standard, 12 credits per semester, 24 for calendar year. That's what they need to have. This is a bit of me on my soapbox, but I believe this, and this is also being an institution like Simon Fraser, okay? And I have degrees from schools in the States. I know lots of mates that are from the States. I have lots of friends who went to schools in the States too, okay? And that may not be the case across the board. And I know that for a fact, personally, it's not the case. At SFU, it's a challenging degree. And as a coach, I think for me, I've recognized a long time ago that to judge somebody on what their GPA is, I don't think is accurate. I think that every individual and their ability to achieve academic success is defined to the individual. So we may have a guy that busts his balls to get a 2.0, but I know he works hard for that. And he may not be the type of person that excels in an environment that is very much in a classroom where a prof or a TA is dictating to you, and you're having to memorize and regurgitate, right? That type of environment, and then apply it to a test or a paper. Some people do not excel in that, and that's okay. And that's not who they are as. That's not the type of learner they are. But I've really tried to make an effort to really praise people when I know that they are working to their ability to work at, and still having balance to their lives too. You know, I'm not, and again, I'll throw his name in again, Brandon Watson. That is, to me, it's not realistic for everybody. Matter of fact, I may not ever have another Brandon Watson that comes in. That's who he is, and that's great for him. You know, and a story about him, Brandon, to give you a bit of context for people who are listening and see, he was our captain of our team, and 3-year captain, actually, or 4-year, now I think about it. And he was GPA well over 4.0. So top you can get at SFU is 4.33. And so I think he graduated 4.2 something. So barely getting any A minuses or A's in there, it's entirely A pluses. And Brandon also had a responsibility, as far as I was concerned, as a captain of the team, to socialize with his teammates outside of football. And, you know, that was a discussion I remember having with Brandon, is making sure that that was important to him too, is, you know, doing that, because it couldn't just be about him and his academic excellence at SFU. He needed to be able to be a normal person and not a robot, which I think so many people saw him as. You know, this, like, he had two things. It was academics and it was football, and that's it. There's nothing else that mattered. That's just not realistic. And so back to the point is, I really believe in well-roundedness. I think your university years are some of the best years of your life. And I don't think those are necessarily in the classroom. Those are the best times. I think those are achieved with your friends and having a good social life. And also, you know, living in Vancouver, which is an unbelievable city. I mean, some people don't ever have that luxury to be able to do that. And I think that's really important. So again, 2.0 to stay eligible, right? But for me, again, it's every individual is treated differently on their academic success and how much of a kick in the butt they need to make sure that they're doing the business.
Yeah, for sure. And now jumping back to the SFU program, the soccer program at least, you already spoke about, you know, the rich history of culture that has walked through those change rooms and walked through the tunnel and everything. How important is it for you to have freshmen that understand the culture when they walk in?
Jeez. Yeah, I mean, that's the reality, Adam, is they don't know until they're there, and then they start being socialized to it, right? And that isn't, I'm a believer in this. I don't think that occurs like overnight. I think sometimes it's easier than others. It really depends on the personality of the player in person, right? Some people are really like, they're sponge and they eat it up, and they're not, they don't fight against the culture and understanding of, like, all right, like, you know, I was a big time player on my team. Now I am player 29, and I got to figure out how to find my place in this group. And I need to be humble and work my tail off and do what I'm told to do, and like find my voice within that. That doesn't always happen, you know, and that's not to suggest that person ends up becoming a really important part of the team. There's plenty of examples of this. There's also plenty of examples too, Adam, that are guys that come in and you're like, this is not going to work. The guys don't like him. and the player is fighting this because he will not, he doesn't want to be a part of something bigger than himself, and they don't survive. They don't survive. I'm big on change room dynamics. I think that the most successful teams, it comes from the leadership of the group within the group, and the guys, the leaders of those teams. So the seniors, the team captains, the guys that have been there, the sophomores, juniors, everybody has a different role in this, to be able to really galvanize the group internally and making sure the freshmen are on board and on for the ride. This is, of course, achievable. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's more difficult than others. Easier said than done if a freshman comes in and he's relied on to play right away, right? And then he's in this an interesting dynamic, and maybe he's taking the place of a player that's an upperclassman who is a leader in the group, right? So these are all scenarios that happen every year, and it's always different every year. And it's much easier when you have established leaders in the group, guys who also they're going to be playing a lot of games too. Much more difficult if this guy that you're like, may not play this year, and he's also team captain, right? I mean, to me, I have a hard time reconciling. Not to say that can't happen, but that's very difficult.
No, yeah, definitely. Looking at what a normal year would be like, we're going to exclude this past one, but just how busy of a life is it for a student athlete at SFU, kind of in season and in the off season? Just kind of looking at what their life's like academically and athletically.
Sure. I think in the fall, it's really heavy. I mean, we're unique too, Adam, is the amount of travel. I mean, you've experienced this. It's a challenge, man. Like, you have to really sacrifice things in the fall when we're busy in season. We may be on a foreign trip, which is all the time, and then we're on the road a lot. I mean, certainly one of yours, I think for sure, we didn't play a conference game at home or non-conference game at home. We're on the road for all of them, and like that's really tough, and that's asking a lot of the guys to have some responsibility to make sure they're prioritizing their academic work within that, and also still achieving the high level that we're asking them to achieve in the football pitch. I'm big on that. I think that ultimately has to come. Like, academics are number one. I mean, we've had lots of examples that guys have had to miss training, certainly for class, but also games because they have exams and the prof's not going to move it for them, or the prof will say, well, okay, yeah, your midterm, you can miss it, but now your final's worth 100%. And that's in a business course. And the guys are like, no chance, I'm not doing that. So, we've had to fly guys in because of this to different settings because that's the reality of it. So fall, very heavy. Springtime, I think much lighter. Personally, as a coach, I think as players, I hope they feel that way. Certainly more flexibility with missing training and games, etc. Last couple of years, we haven't even had a spring season with games because I think that we were able to achieve more in our men's leagues, and it's a little bit more light in that way. Maybe for us at SFU, maybe they're taking all their challenging courses in the spring because they know, in the fall, there's no way I can do the workload. It's impossible. Or they know the two profs say, if you have class on Thursday, you can't miss class. So sorry, you can't go on the road, right? And in the springtime, they can do these things. So that's a reality being an institution like SFU. I think it's a big selling point to be a big time academic school. Okay. But it also, there are challenges for sure with this. And, these are challenges to work around and work with. But I believe that you can still achieve what we're trying to achieve. And that's win a national championship as a group within these challenges.
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, I remember being there. I had those conversations with profs. It's not easy, especially as a young kid coming in at 18, 19, walking in going, hey, I have to miss half a semester.
Yeah.
It's a difficult conversation to have. And it's one of those things that you got to have it, you sort it out, and then you just do your best you just kind of do your best to adapt with it and move on and achieve what you can in the class and on the pitch.
Yeah, and it's no disrespect to the vast majority of teams that we would compete against in the MSO Division Two, but SFU is it's a different institution. You know, I mean, academically, the profile of the school is just very different. So, you know, our guys, yeah, they're just it's just a different beast that we're asking our players to do and sacrifice than it is at some other schools. And but again, I know that we can win that way. We've proven we can win that way. Um, you know, it's just a matter of, but it's a sacrifice. I think is the best way to describe that. Certainly in the fall, it's a sacrifice. The guys, the successful footballers sacrifice social life to be successful. Not saying they don't give up all social life. You know this about me. So I believe in that. I think it's important. But they're
Definitely.
not, yeah, they're not out on the town or they're gone. And it's not by my doing. It's just they fell out of school. So
Definitely. Um, Now, when you receive highlight tapes, what are kind of like, what do you want to see in them from a player? Number one. Number two, what are some like things that don't include this, kind of the do's and don'ts for you?
sure. For me personally, I really do not want to see um, somebody on a training pitch, right, with a one-on-one with somebody, like we're juggling the ball. To me, that's just so irrelevant for me. Maybe other coaches like that. I don't know. The only position where that would be, I think, a good thing, okay, would be goalkeeping because it's such a technical position and there are things you can pick up in a training session from that. For players, though, I want to see you play. And a highlight video, I think, ultimately is a very good first impression. I don't think it needs to be 12 minutes long. I think a 3-minute highlight video that's really good is important. But I think for me, I'm not recruiting a player on a highlight video. He's never going to be offered a scholarship off of that ever.
Yeah, it's
So,
kind of something to get you interested, and then you want to see full game tapes. You want to go
you
see
got
them
it.
play
You
live.
got it. And even more so live, right? I mean,
Yeah,
there's a reason why the vast majority of our guys that like are local guys because we see those guys live. We see them live multiple times. You know, it is a gamble, Adam. It is a gamble. It's a calculated gamble, but it's a gamble to go overseas and watch a player, a foreign player, because I may only see them in a showcase for a certain amount of time, okay? Or even let's think about to Canada. Go to Toronto. Like you know, we are very well off at SFU comparatively, okay? And that's great. But I still don't have the budget to fly to Toronto 10 times to watch a player play 10 times. It's impossible. You know, I'd be fortunate to get to watch him twice. And so, but that's still such a minor amount of time compared to the local guy, like Adam Jones, for example, who I'm talking to right now, who I could watch 50 times if I wanted to in a fall semester training and games. That's not unrealistic. You know, for us, a rule of thumb is 10 games locally because there's no excuses for us not to do that. 10 games, watch a player 10 times. And then out of those 10 times, are they consistently good? You know, yay or nay, you know, off games here and there. That's fine. But are they consistently good? And that says a lot, right? But that is not achievable anywhere. It's just unfortunately we can't do that with foreign players or players out of province. So
yeah, no, for sure. This is just something that I think has been exacerbated by the not playing now.
yeah,
Obviously, we're not playing games, we're not having to travel, but Do you think that it would be a smart and wise decision for kids if they were interested in going to SFU? Say they're from Coquitlam, they're from Surrey, they're from Vancouver. How important would it be for you to have a kid who is interested in coming to SFU, coming to watch you guys play at home?
Oh, again, to me, it's no different than me saying we need to watch a player 10 times as locally. To me, there is no excuse. Honestly, there is no excuse. If you want to go to a school and it's local for a player, right? BC kid, Lower Mainland. We'll take the interior out of it and north. And even in the island, although to me, on a ferry, that's still a reasonable thing to do. If you're really interested in going to this place, seeing them live and understanding, okay, do I fit or not, is everything. I mean, and you also have to be honest about yourself. There are plenty of footballers. You probably know that. We probably still know guys that are like this, that are playing for Italy and Nations Cup. We're very unrealistic about them as a footballer. Like, they have a very different perspective. And I'm just throwing Italy out there. I'm not suggesting there's a player on there, but do you know what I mean? And so they have a very different view of them as a footballer than maybe everybody else does. So, you know, you have to be realistic with yourself too. If you are
I think the
you know what I mean?
realistic part of it, I think part of that the unrealistic standards that some people might have is because they don't go and watch what it's like.
I think so too.
Why
I think so too.
if I was a young, I remember going to watch UBC play and SFU play and all this stuff. And yeah, I had friends on the team and they were older than me, so that's kind of why I went. But at the same time, if you're seriously considering and you want to know what the level's like, you need to go watch. I think that's kind of the secondary issue here as far as exposure is concerned, is that at that level, it is a different level than youth. That doesn't matter where you're playing across North America, it's a different level.
I agree. And also, Adam, even to step forward, make yourself uncomfortable. Put yourself in a situation, whether it's like, you know, an FTF combine or whatever it may be, a ID camp that goes on, or, you know, locally youth sports schools, you can go out and the rules are different. You can go to a training session and maybe even train in that environment with all these rules in place. But put yourself out there. But you got to be willing to take, you know, the fact that somebody's going to be very honest with you potentially and say, listen, you're not good enough, right? But that's the only way to really figure it out. I mean, I wish that we had that luxury that every player that we're interested in be like, well, come to training, because you figure it out real quick, right? In one training session, be like, there's no chance. There's no redeeming value here for us. Great guy, fits us academically, but not good enough, right? That's not the reality for SFU, at least. But individual players, I think that very much could be a reality for them, is to really make yourself uncomfortable. Put yourself in a situation where you don't know anybody, and see how you fit there, and how do you look in that environment, right? Versus,
sure.
well, you got to come to my club team and you got to watch me play. You know, I'm the best player. That's a very different thing.
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, you mentioned a little bit earlier some showcases and stuff. What are the showcases that you guys try and get to yearly in a normal year?
So I always go to Norway and Sweden for showcase events. We have a long history of having good Scandinavian players at our institution. And we also, there's a lot of things that fit the profile of the guys we're looking at from there. Try to go to Holland as well for games, and sometimes Germany too. So those are my times I go overseas. I haven't been to UK yet, so I guess I could go there in the future, although we've had good British guys. So, but I inherited those guys, I guess. And but locally, the FTF showcase has always been a really good one that we've been to. I try to go to that one in Ontario as well. I think that's, for us, we're trying to do a better job of expanding across Canada and getting to different markets. But again, it's so difficult, Adam, because we're spoiled by having, and we've had a good vein of local players, right? I mean, that's the honest truth. And so we've had to mine them, of course, and work hard to identify these guys and work hard on the recruiting trail, et cetera, to get them here. But they're good players locally. You know, what happens if that dries up if there's 2 or 3 years that are not like that, right? And we're going to have to expand out to different provinces, you know, Alberta, et cetera, and Ontario. But two in particular I could think of. So, yeah, I mean, showcase events I think are really important. Because that, to me, that's two things that happen right away. So one, if players in an environment, maybe they don't know anybody, so this is good. So you can really see some things right about them, about their personality. You know, do they talk? You know, are they quiet? Right away. So you can see that. You also can see the things that I think that you wouldn't see in their normal team environment, and that's because they're going to go have to find the ball sometimes. If they're a center mid, right? If they're on their own team and everybody knows they're the best player, well, for Wolves, okay? Find Adam Jones. Keep playing the ball, okay? That's easy. That's easy for you. You don't have to even really work for it to a certain extent. It's a very different thing if you are fighting other play on your own team, right? Because it's a showcase event of getting on the ball, right? And then step further, you're in the final third and you want to be seen. So are you A, going to be selfish and shoot all the damn time? Or B, are you not going to be selfish at all and just pass the ball? Or C, the best one, is not about any of that shit. It's about decision making. Is your decision making still really high, even though you don't know anybody, right? And when you see that in a player, then there's something, there's something really interesting there, right? We're the two Baker brothers we got from Ontario. You can see that about them right away in their environment, is that they have that about them. You know, you're gonna love them, Adam. They fit our profile as footballers in the middle of the park. You know, their anaerobic level is really high, so you can play them 90 minutes. They have good habits. They talk, and they're good footballers. And they're smart, and they're selfless, and they're trying to do the right things. They're not trying to just score 20 goals from the 10. Great to have, obviously, but that's not what it's about for them. So
another set of brothers at SFU.
Yeah, well, that's pattern. On purpose, man. So honestly, Adam, if Kyle was crap, I would never recruit him, but he's really a good player. So of course we're going to lean on you to get him. So.
All right. Looking at, again, going back to kind of the recruiting side of it, when would you say that you start recruiting a class?
Okay. Well, yeah, typical year. Okay. So
very different. This year we're throwing out the window.
So we just got a player committed to us for fall 2021 that we have been working on for 2 years. So typically we're 2 years out. Typically. So
typically about grade 11 or grade 10, would you say?
So grade.
Kind of start identifying more or less grade 10 and then.
Grade 10, but really recruiting grade 11, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Identification, meaning that we're watching some games, and now we're taking notes, and we build our Excel spreadsheet of all these players, all these teams, and we're starting to grade players. Grade 10, grade 11 now becomes okay. This guy is very interesting. Let's watch him a bunch. And then when it's appropriate, then we start our conversations with them under the NCAA rules, and really actively recruiting black players. They're really, really interesting. But I'd be naive to say that our recruiting's always done like that, because players always pop up. And again, I'd be dumb to turn down a player who's really special, or a guy that maybe is a Canadian player that is at a Division I institution, and all of a sudden he realizes that, I can't afford. I don't want to have an $80,000 debt in 4 years, which is a very realistic thing. Even I'm being on a good scholarship, I want to go back home. We've had a lot of success with guys like that. And all of a sudden they're back home and they get tuition paid for, and they have no expenses. I mean, that's a big win for the family, and it's a big time degree too. So I always try to leave room for that, for those type of people that may want to come back home, or an international player, because those do happen later in the game, always later in the game. But that's because we couldn't find anybody locally that we thought was that big time.
Mm-hmm.
If it was up to me, I would have a team, 27 guys, and they all lived at home locally. Okay, that's a perfect scenario. That's not the reality. If we want to achieve greatness and win something, you got to have mind players from other places. So.
And lastly, just any further advice that you have for any young Canadian footballers that are, wanting to play university sports, possibly come into SFU?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say that I was the one that said this, but Kevin Harms, I'm lucky to have some really special people that I coach with, and one of them is Kevin Harms, who's a former Canadian international and played professionally in several different countries, including the MLS for a couple of years. So, and then Tyler Boddock, who's a professional goalkeeper coach, and he's been with the national team on the women's side on the youth level, and so. Guys have said this, and I think that this rings really true. Okay, I guess two things. One, you are in control of your own development. I think it's really important. Yes, you want to put yourself in the right environment if you can, and make yourself uncomfortable, because that's number two. But you control that, not anybody else, not your Metro coach, your Gold coach, your BCHPL coach, your coach with a professional environment. You're the one, and to take ownership over that. And that's not just making sure that you're a good footballer inside the environment. To be a really good footballer, and this, Adam, it's countless hours playing with your brother, playing with your dad, being on the pitch by yourself. That's it. That's the reality. And that's onus over it. You'll never, unless you're just special athletically and have some other special characteristics, you'll never achieve, actually, I'll say that, never achieve, even if you had those things, you'll never achieve your full potential if the only training that occurs with you is on the pitch with a coach, period. No matter how good the coach is, it doesn't matter. You have to be able to have some self empowerment to go do it on your own. You have to. And again, for Canadian guys, be uncomfortable. If you're a good footballer, don't settle. Don't settle. Put yourself out there. Go to places. Go. If you have an international passport, go overseas. Go and put yourself in an environment that you don't know the language, and it's really difficult. That's how you grow as a footballer. That's how you grow as a person too, is being uncomfortable and being in an environment where you're challenged. I think, never be comfortable. If you're comfortable as a footballer, you're in the wrong place. You need to go. That's what I think.
It's really good advice. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Steins. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Anytime, Matt, and I really appreciate you, as an alumni, and I know you work with Shane Sitar too, and I think Shane's still working with FTF, is he?
Yeah.
Great. So, we're really lucky to have guys like you, you both in this environment, that I think that you're really, you're trying to create an environment to help players be seen, right, and be shown, and have more opportunities. And I think that's really great, because it isn't the reality for everybody. I grew up in an environment that wasn't realistic, where I grew up in Texas and West Texas, and it's not realistic across Canada either, that players get profiled when they should be profiled. And so I think that's really great. And I think that, again, we're lucky, SFU, to have two guys like yourself that are in that environment. And let me assure you, if you're an FDF person, that these guys certainly let us know who are the good players and the people we should be following up with. So we're fortunate in that way.